Okay, my name is Dylan7. I used to play zombies, don't anymore. Used to submit to zombie records, I don't anymore. Today we're just going to be talking about zombierecords.com, the issues surrounding it. I'm going to give my opinion on what's going on. There's a lot of unrest in the community. A lot of people have some issues with it, including me. We're going to keep this as drama-free as possible and address things logically and fairly. If you're not here for that, then just leave now. Okay, to start, I'm making this video because I feel like the Black Ops 3 leaderboards have just gotten way too excessive. It started with no quick revive, and it's only gotten worse. Another issue here we're facing is that the gums are dividing the community on how the website should be structured. Third thing we're going to be talking about is the communication and decision making by Zombie Records themselves. There's almost no transparency as to what they're doing and why they're doing it, which is a reflection on how it's managed and staffed, and we're getting nowhere with how that's been going. Finally, we need to talk about how Zombie Records is a world record website, and the influx of lower rounds and just frankly absurd records that are being submitted because of profiles is just becoming a problem crowding the front page. This is a site for world records, after all. Okay, the first point that I'm going to make is that there's just frankly too many leaderboards. We now have 3 different gumball categories, and it's no longer looking at just strictly solo versus co-op. It's now solo versus 2-player versus 3-player versus 4-player. Then when you break that down into the actual challenge leaderboards, you have regular high rounds, you have no power, you have first room, you have whatever else I missed. So, too many leaderboards. Most of these won't even get submitted to, especially with new COD dropping here soon and the player base just dropping off. A good deal of these records are irrelevant anyway and are just being picked up by anybody who just wants to be on the fucking website and claim that they have a world record. I think a lot of the good players really see these records as just pointless. Now the problem with so many leaderboards is that Zombies is typically a game that it takes a long time to get somewhere, especially when you're talking world records. These games, even the ones that just aren't strictly solo high rounds, take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and not to mention RNG. That's what makes these world records. This many boards, there's just frankly not enough people to compete for them. You may think there are, but then you end up getting boards like some of the ones I've showed that have 2 submissions, and the highest round is just a fucking joke, to be honest. What are they doing there? So the fact that we have all these new leaderboards and not enough players to actually populate them, whereas they think that we have enough players to actually populate them, but we don't in a competitive manner, because this is a competitive website. Now, what you get instead of people competing for records and pushing the limit of what's possible, which still happens to a degree, don't get me wrong, but instead of that actually happening on the real important boards, you have a lot of irrelevant ones popping up, which are really similar to other ones, and players just jumping at a chance to grab these easy records that will probably never get pushed in the way that they should. You know, you see these really, really dumb world records that just sit there, and most of the boards don't even get fully populated. And the boards that should be focused on instead, that most players in the community really care about and deserve the attention, never get focused on at all, and don't get the records actually pushed in the way that they should in the time frame that they realistically could be. Okay, now we need to talk about gums. This is where the fracture in the community really starts to show. People have very strong opinions about these, and it's tearing the site apart due to Black Ops 3 game mechanics. The gums are becoming very, very necessary to the records that are being submitted. I know I have very strong opinions about them, and everyone has their own opinion on how they should be handled, but there needs to be a discussion. Now I'm going to lay out the facts. Online and local are no longer just separated based off of, local you're not going to disconnect, online you will. You have very strong advantages in online with the DLC for Gumballs, essentially making it pay to win. Shopping free, self-medication, bullet boost, near-death experience. Not only are they ruining the no power and the first rooms, but online solo world records are even being pushed this way. And it comes down to not a game of survival, but really who can stay awake the longest and actually grind out like that. It's not healthy, it's not safe, and it's not really the right competitiveness that this game should be looking for. I mean, that's co-op. If you want to see how long you can stay awake, not how long you can hit the fucking gumball machine with your DLC 4 gums, just to take a solo world record. So the thing with megas is you actually need to spend a lot of time farming these things to stay competitive in the game mode. So every record, one that's been pushed far enough to be respected, takes time and effort, and not to mention RNG. But spending the time just to meet a prerequisite before you even go into that is a whole nother story. A lot of people don't have that time or the desire to sit there and farm all day just to be eligible to submit to a leaderboard potentially in the future. Now I'm going to use Der Eisendrache here specifically as an example. This is a map that 255, the max round limit in Black Ops 3, is theoretically possible only in online. But to do this, you would have to have farmed for a decent amount of time to get enough of these DLC 4 gumballs, and you'd have to play straight through with a very, very minimal amount of sleep. This is not very good for competition because there's only a select few number of people who can compete in this way. Now let's talk about Zombie Records itself here as an organization and the staff. There needs to be a lot more transparency. We don't know what they do behind the scenes. I get the impression that they don't even know what they're doing behind the scenes. There is hardly any dialogue with the community. It pretty much just, we see a tweet, this is how it's going to be, and we take it. And then there's massive blowback on Twitter when people don't accept it and drama starts. This isn't a very good way to handle things. I've proposed this multiple times, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere. We need to have an official Zombie Records stream with routine discussions, something, I mean, not every fucking day, obviously, but once a month on the official Zombie Records stream. That way, when you know that stream goes live, we're here to talk about things. Plane trap strat. That would be solved before it ever became a fucking issue, because we would be sitting there discussing, hearing everyone's viewpoint. The Jigfio Electric Cherry strat. That's going to be the next thing that blows up. People deciding if that's legit or not. The players are what makes Zombie Records, not Zombie Records. They don't make the players. Players need to come together and actually decide the rules, because the website would not function without us. And it's just a massive brawl on Twitter and in Twitch chats that goes nowhere if there's not actual civil discussion in an organized environment. Now, about Zombie Records not knowing what they're doing behind the scenes, it's pretty apparent in their rule enforcement, which seems to be pick and choose. I know myself and several players have records on the board, either now or in the past, that do not have full footage, and only requiring full footage on submission, which I've been told that they do, but also their rules state otherwise, is not how it needs to be. You need full footage all the time, something to look at for reference down the line in case a potential cheating accusation pops up. Gonna wrap this up here soon, but one of the last things I want to talk about is Zombie Records and not Zombie Rounds. This website is growing at a very fast pace, and it's reaching a larger audience, and I think it's just because of how accessible it's becoming to the community as a whole. Not necessarily the high round community, but the zombie community. And I don't really think that's a good thing. We're reaching outside of the target audience, those being the ones that are there to see world record gameplay and the stuff that follows very closely behind it. It's not a place to submit rounds that you would see on your friends list in the game. I think the minimum submission requirements should be raised, and we should definitely talk about this in the future. Alright, lastly, before I wrap this up, I just wanted to touch on how Zombie Records actually communicates with the community when they choose to do so, and that is through the official Zombie Records Twitter account, which is not very official or very professional by all appearances. It's being treated almost as a personal Twitter with the responses and the way that they interact with users who reach out to them, even if it's just to complain. Uh, Organizations that handle business professionally, you can see the responses, how they treat people. They're actually representing the entity and not the individual that is just running it that day. Alright, I'm gonna conclude this now because I'm tired as shit. This is the best that I could do for a video in a couple hours on this topic. It just kind of came up out of nowhere. Been meaning to do it though. So sorry if it's not good enough. Alright, so there's definitely a fucking problem, people. I think everyone realizes that by now. Here's my solution. I don't think anyone's gonna like it but me. But you separate speedruns into two categories: all gums and no gums. You allow co-op to play all gums only. And then you take every other leaderboard, literally, and make it classic gum only. Now, that will restore the old challenge leaderboards, like no power in first room, to actually being the old challenge leaderboards, instead of just, a fucking solo with half the map restricted like it is now. It will allow high rounds to actually be played in local mode, like they should. And the game at its core without megas is just a lot better. I really think it is, and you wouldn't know that till you try it. You don't need those gums, guys. You really don't. It's a fun game and it can still be competitive, and it solves a lot of the issues. But that being said, that's only half the side. ZR needs to get better at what they do. The community needs to get better at what we do, which is give our opinion, and we can only help ZR by giving our opinion in a organized manner that's not just throwing a fucking hissy fit and starting drama on Twitter. That being said, it's equal for both sides. ZR needs to actually actively listen to the community, consider what we say, even if it is somebody complaining. That's what it's like being an organization. You listen to people bitch. Hopefully there's not that many, but I don't think there will be if people actually actively listen and consider ideas, which I think ZR just doesn't do, or at least that's the feeling that many players have. Not much else to be said. I'm tired. I'm about to go to sleep, but I'll tell you that I've been trying to get my rounds removed from the leaderboards for almost a week now, and somebody at ZR does not apparently like that because they've been trying everything to not let me do that. I'll do whatever it takes to get my rounds off there until things change, even if that means deleting literally every second of footage that I have for both my 221 and my 219 games. I think I've talked to several of their big players who are, just about at that point where they're pulling their records as well, or at least gonna attempt to soon. Just remember that Zombie Records is absolutely nothing without players to submit to it, especially the players that actually play for Zombie Records, because it's the records that matter, and that's what people like. That's what we're here for. So let's just get better about handling this shit and not just bitching and moaning on Twitter and getting nowhere with the giant drama clusterfuck. It's pretty easy, guys, if you just try. Dylan7 out.